Good evening, everyone. This is the Puyallup City Council meeting for Tuesday, October 21st, 2025. Good evening, everyone. This meeting is officially called to order. I'm the Mayor, Jim Castema. Could you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Gilliam.
Present.
Councilmember Whitting.
Present.
Councilmember Dorr.
Present.
Councilmember Adler.
Present.
Councilmember Johnson.
Present.
Deputy Mayor King.
Present.
Mayor Castema.
Present. At this time, I would like to, I believe we only have one student here, but this student has been here before, and I would like to acknowledge him, a young gentleman from Cascade Christian Church, or School, excuse me. If you could go ahead and stand up and just tell us who you are, we'd greatly appreciate it.
Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew Khashoggi. I was having a meeting with Councilman Gilliam here, and I was here actually 2 weeks ago at the previous council meeting, just learning more about government.
Thank you. It's a pleasure seeing you here. I don't see any other students here. With that, let's go ahead and move down the agenda. If we could have item number 1, approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Excellent. We'll now move on to item number 2, presentations and proclamations. This is a proclamation on the Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Whereas domestic violence is a public health crisis that involves a pattern of behavior used by one individual to establish and maintain power and control over the other. And whereas domestic violence shatters lives, robs children of their innocence, and can destroy the life of any citizen regardless of their age, race, income, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or gender. And whereas the Puyallup City Council applauds, encourages, and supports the ongoing robust and compassionate efforts by police, prosecutors' offices, the volunteer agencies to support victims of domestic violence. And whereas the City of Puyallup, as part of its commitment to end domestic violence, employs a domestic violence victim advocate to support victims during the criminal process, to educate youth about the healthy relationships and access vital resources and assist in the prosecution of cases. And whereas the City of Puyallup urges all citizens to reaffirm their commitment that domestic violence in any form and to any degree is not acceptable and is preventable, and whereas the City of Puyallup recognizes the need for community awareness around domestic violence and therefore supports the effort of the Purple Light Nights program, which remembers the victims who have lost their lives to domestic violence, supports those who have survived domestic violence, and provides hope for those who are still living with abuse. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Jim Castema, on behalf of the Puyallup City Council, hereby declare the month of October 25th as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in the City of Puyallup, and I urge all citizens to agree that domestic violence is not acceptable. I witness whereof I have set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Puyallup to be affixed this 21st day, October 2025. And if we could have Jeanette, is it Murad? Murad. Jeanette Murad, please come forward to accept this.
I would just like to take a moment to thank the council and Mayor Castema for continually supporting the efforts here that we are working with victims. I wish I could share with you the things that I am hearing back. I have emails and cards and thank yous from the people that we're working with, and that extends to you because you're the ones that are keeping our programs in place, and includes the police department and everybody that is working on these same efforts. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeanette. With that, we're going to now move on to citizen comments. Please, if you have the opportunity, we have some forms over on the table. If you wish to make some comments, go ahead and fill those out, hand that to the city clerk. And with that, city clerk, please read the guidelines.
This part of the meeting is for general citizen comments. Please reserve any public hearing testimony to that section of the agenda. The mayor will call on those who have provided their names in advance. Then the mayor will call for other citizens who wish to speak. For the record, please state your name and address or city council district in which you reside. Please direct your comments to the council as a whole, not individual council members. All comments are limited to 3 minutes. The clerk will provide verbal notice when only 30 seconds remain. As a reminder, this portion of the meeting is council's opportunity to hear from the community and not a time to engage in debate. Lastly, per state law, this public comment period cannot be used to speak in support of or in opposition to a ballot measure or individual candidacy, and no such comments will be allowed.
Thank you, city clerk. Anderlyn Izquierdo, please.
Good evening, council members. My name is Angelina Izquierdo from Pierce County District Number 2. And my comments on the proclamation Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Domestic violence, also known as DV, has been a serious century-old issue. To have it more recognized today in the city where I live in for its severity and how people are trying to be dedicated to being committed in ending this string of violent acts fills me with a bit more relief. However, there's such a long ways to go for more people to realize that irrational physical violence and manipulation needs to cease to an end for women too. While reviewing the proclamation, I noticed that some information was missing on how the situation can begin or spread as a normalized behavior from person to person like wildfire. There's also domestic abuse that involves more people and isn't restricted to a household or by who commits this brutality. DV usually focuses on a specific family member or partner spouse or someone you reside with in a home. We live in an era of artificial intelligence where a lot of these dead metal and silicone human knockoffs are mostly in the form of women, meant mostly for sexual deviances. Our society is over-sexualizing women to do what only men want as the goal, reversing feminists or our feminist history. So in the ways they have been obtaining this data by stalking, hitting everywhere, pushing our backs in and out, shoving robot part objects into our bodies, and breaching all forms of privacy. This is part of domestic violence, domestic abuse, human trafficking, and the illegal portion of experimentation meant to end our lives. So it's robbing us women of our freedom that we have a right to have. This goes for all genders of innocent people as well, who want to live their lives in peace. That's usually the end goal for when it comes to DV situation. So I'm also in it to end DV. Thank you for the Purple Light Nights program as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Vera Glaze.
Vera Glaze, address 1103 11th Street Southwest. I've lived in Puyallup for 60 years, in my home for 47. Now, I need to talk to you about the co-living housing. I watched your the city council on October 7th, I think, and it sounded like you guys had a lot of questions that I had, and I think that we need to stand up to Olympia and just tell them, no, I don't care if it's mandated or not. There's got to be something that we can just say no to these homes. There sounds like there could be 8 or 10 of them. We don't know how this is going to impact Puyallup. Puyallup has grown. from when I was a little girl. And what we need to do, we have these large apartment buildings coming in the next year or two. I don't know how fast they'll go. But that's a lot of new residents in Puyallup. And here we're shoving more housing. So we're going to need more police. And these are rentals. They're not like the condos that we have where people buy and they care about their place. These are rentals. So they tend to not care about their places as well. So I'm wanting the city commissioner or the city planning and maybe the city attorney to get together to see how we can fight Olympia, because this is our town, not theirs. And I'd like to know how you get, which I know you can't answer, but I'd like to know how you tell the residents on what Olympia is wanting and mandating us. Because that's not right for the people that have lived here for years, and all of a sudden these homes come in. And I don't know how they work. I know they're up in Seattle, I've read, but this co-living and having a community, kitchen and living room, I see a lot of problems, and which I think police will probably have to be involved after a while. I don't know. I'm guessing. Again, this is small little tiny suites, and I mean tiny, and then everybody has different personalities, and they're supposed to go into a living room or a kitchen.
The speakers reach 3 minutes.
So you need to fight for us.
Thank you, Vera. Okay, next person is Bud Metzger.
Bud Metzger, District 3. Good evening. I wasn't going to talk about that housing issue, but the way I did it when we were kids is there might be 10 guys in a house, and we didn't all get along, and we didn't keep the place up as much as possible, but we did have a place that we could collectively rent. Those places are not available now. It's a lot more expensive for all of our kids to make it, and we need to do something to help them. Ignoring it just causes more problems. How long have we been complaining about homeless? How do you think it happens? I volunteered for a halfway house for Harborview and Western State Psych Unit for psychiatric diagnoses post-discharge to teach them. They lived in a big apartment in Seattle, and I took them out for activities. These people are not faking it. They have tremendous challenges. We need to find a way to give them some respect and find a way. Now, do I feel for this person? Yes. Does she have a right to be uncertain about it? Yes, because it is something new. But we do need to find a way to provide for humans, because that's what happens with humans. People get sick, they make wrong decisions, and, hey, not everybody's a nice person, but to ignore it and not deal with it is the wrong avenue. Secondly, I want to talk about Domestic Violence Month. I've been waiting for this for a year, because last year, when the proclamation was made, a councilperson by the name of Dean Johnson disputed the domestic violence advocates' numbers up here, which I thought was exceptionally rude. And then he went on to say that he wanted to forgive them, which I thought was exceptionally rude. It's one of the most dangerous responses that police have to deal with. You support police? Some of you have it all over on your signs. Well, action, not words. Domestic violence is a serious issue. It is tremendously dangerous for our community and especially our officers.
30 seconds.
So please, this is not a game. we need to respect her and fund her and not question her ability. She has a lot to do. Thank you.
Thank you. We ask that when comments are made that they do not talk specifically address a single council member. And if one is addressed, I always give them the opportunity to clarify if they so choose in a very short, concise way. Councilmember Johnson, you have that if you so choose.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't recall what he's referring to. I'm happy to take a look at it, but it seems to me that based off of my instinct of who I am, it seems out of context, so I can't speak to that, but I'll let it stand where it is.
Okay. With that, is there anyone else who would like to come forward and make a comment? Okay. With that, we're now going to move on to the consent agenda. Today we have a total of 5 items. This is where we take the entirety of this portion of the agenda, 5 bills, and then we pass with just 1 vote. Having said that, is there a council member who would like any of these set aside for further discussion? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to accept all those on the consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, excellent. Let's move on to number 4, public hearing. Councilmember Johnson.
Mr. Mayor, I don't know in terms of the protocol of the public hearing, but I'd like to have the council consider an amendment for 4A. Would we want to go through a public hearing process first and entertain an amendment, or how would you like to operate in that
What we will do, we will consider an amendment when it is officially before the body. And what we'll have right now is Barbara Lopez, our finance director, will give a review of this. And then if you so choose to make a motion, you can do that. We will have a public hearing where I will allow public to come forward and comment. So what I would suggest is we do this. Barbara, please, you go ahead, give a presentation on this ordinance. I will call a public hearing. We'll hear citizen comment. After I close that, I will then entertain the motion to put that before us. An amendment at that time is appropriate.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilmember Dorr.
I just have a question about that. If the amendment is made.
Microphone.
Oh, sorry. Thought I hit it. If the amendment is not made until after the public hearing is closed, then the public doesn't have an opportunity to comment on the amendment.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because my perception is that in fact the amendment may or may not be appropriate based on the public comments. So I'm willing to do whichever way you would like to do that, but keep in mind that someone must make a motion before public comments then to accept and put the motion before us. If you so choose, we can do that.
I don't know what the amendment is, so I can't speak to it. I'm just concerned that the public, if we're having a public hearing, that they actually have an opportunity to speak to what we're
Again, if
doing.
you would like to put it forward before the body, feel free to do so. So with that, Barbara, please.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. Good evening, Council. Barbara Lopez, Finance Director. Tonight before you is the public hearing on the revenues in the 2026 property tax levy, and I just have a short presentation for you. Just a quick reminder of where we are in the process. We actually adopted our 2025-26 biennial budget last November. This is the required relook at 2026 required by law for the mid-biennium adjustment. On July 15th, we did come before Council and talked about our initial revenue projections and expense projections and talked through that with you all. On October 14th, Council had a budget study session to review all of the information in the preliminary adjustment. And tonight, October 21st, we are at the public hearings and first readings of the ordinances for both the property tax levy and the budget adoption. And then second readings for both are scheduled on November 18th, which is the next council meeting. So the action needing tonight, which could be modified, is the public hearing on the revenue sources, including property taxes, and then first reading of the ordinance levying the property taxes, and then to go along with that, by law, there's also a resolution that needs to be passed stating the 26 property tax increase in terms of dollars and a percentage. So the revenues in the proposed 2026 mid-biennium adjustment are those core revenues that were consistent with what was actually already in the 26 adopted budget and consistent with what we brought forth to council on July 15th. And the utility funds, those are keyed and tied to the construction cost index that's published in June, which was 2.4%, and then there are still some catch-up provisions in the utility rate study that we are following through on. Other than that, there are no substantive changes to the revenues that were actually adopted in the biennial budget itself. And those that I've just mentioned were already incorporated in there. So just really quickly, the citywide revenues are projected to be $166.5 million. Of those, property tax and sales tax are two big key components of that. They total about $46 million, and they're nearly 80% of all of the taxes that the city does collect during the year. Also citywide, we have charges for services, which are a big chunk of that are utility fees. So the city operates its own water, sewer, and storm utilities. Those are the fees paid by those customers. Internal service fees, those are the fees that we departments internally pay for things like IT, equipment, rental facilities, and those things we pay into those. And insurance premiums, again, are the amounts that departments pay into our health insurance fund to be able to pay for claims that come through. And then miscellaneous revenues, the biggest chunk of those are what we call transfers in. Oftentimes, we need to move money from one pot of money to another pot of money. Imagine, several different checking accounts, and you're moving money between them. So basically, we transfer it out of one area and transfer it into another, and it's counted as a revenue when it goes into those. So that's kind of the highlights of our revenues. So then with the property tax levy, that is the action that is before council tonight. So I'll first talk a little bit about the estimated levy, the actual calculation. So what is in the budget right now is starting with the 2025 levy of $11.2 million. The state allows us to add 1% to that. That 1% is $112,187. And then additionally, Pierce County automatically adds the value of new construction that's brought on, and they have some administrative refunds. So when you add those three together, the estimated levy at this point is $11.4 million. So the 1% allowable increase, that doesn't necessarily mean that every single person's property tax is going to go up by $1 million, because it's still a function of your assessed valuation.
Barbara,
Yes.
You didn't say 1 million, you mean 1%.
1%, yes, sorry. Sorry, all those numbers start kind of floating through my head, so thank you for that correction. So that 1% isn't necessarily a strict 1% across all property tax bills. That 1% is allocated amongst the $10.9 billion of assessed valuation that's in the city of Puyallup. So then for each individual taxpayer, it's going to depend on the assessed value of your home. So it's not just that we take everybody's bill and just automatically add 1% to that. Again, it gets divvied out across the entire assessed valuation for the city. So, and then if you did evenly divide that 1% allowable increase over that $10.9 billion of assessed valuation, that's about a penny per 1,000 of assessed valuation. So just an example of how that gets divvied out. So again, the estimated levy is $11.4 million. The assessed valuation right now provided by Pierce County is at $10.9 billion, which means that the general levy rate would be around $1.046 per 1,000 assessed valuation. If you happen to have the median value home, which is about $546,000, your city portion of property tax would be about $572. I do want to point out the graph on the right-hand side as well. These are the 2025 levy rates, but I do want to point out that the city's portion of the total tax bill is only about 10.4%. So it's a very small portion of the overall tax bill. And that is my brief presentation. I'm happy to answer questions.
Any questions? Just so the public knows that we did have a prior meeting that we had where we went over this in detail, the council did, and had time for questions. And that was a public meeting that we had here, specifically on the budget. So with that, Councilmember Whitting.
In looking through the presentation, the one item that Director Lopez didn't really emphasize, and I think is important to understand, is the general levy rate. And the general levy rate in 2025 was $1.08 in round numbers, and in 2026 that number drops to $1.04.6. So the levy rate is actually dropping by about 3%. So I thought that was worthwhile noting and wanted to call attention to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Whitting. And actually, Barbara did point out that the percentage of your property tax that goes to the city is 10.4%. And I believe that in 2020, it was actually 11.9%. So we are seeing a decrease in the portion, and that's not only from the gross amount, but I think it's comparative to the fact that we live within the 1%. The state does not have to live within a 1%.
Correct.
So that is quite a bit of difference. Now, any further questions? Okay, with that, Councilmember Dorr.
Barbara, so we've had this discussion in the past about the 1%, and there's been years where we've not taken the 1%.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just give us a refresher on that and the impacts if this isn't passed, or the impacts as to why we've had to go back, or not back, why we've had to make up some of these revenues from the years in which we did not have a property tax increase?
Absolutely. So going back to 2009, we have had 9 years where we did do the 1% added, and we had 8 years where we did not do the 1% addition. So between 2009 and 2014, the city did not add on the 1% increase. And then also in 2021 and 2022, which was around the COVID time. Those were the two time frames where the city did not add the allowable 1% increase. So in 2015 through 2020, we did, and then since 23, we've also done that. So roughly 50% of the time since 2009, we've done it or not done it. What happens is that 1% increase is intended to help our revenues keep pace with our expenses. It doesn't necessarily, because our expenses actually grow by more than 1% a year, but that was the intention of it, is that it could help keep pace of property tax revenues with our expenses. What's happened too over time is if we don't take that, then our general fund also, the percentage that we rely on sales tax and other taxes becomes increased. So it's a mechanism to try to get us a little bit of CPI towards our expenses. Did that answer your questions?
Yes, and so the bank capacity
is about $2.8 million right now.
And that, can you explain it? It's banked because?
It's banked because, so when the city voted to become part of the fire district instead, city council voted at that particular point in time that, okay, so the city's going to the fire district, so we're not going to have to pay for fire anymore, so we are going to reduce our property tax levy by $3 million-ish. I don't remember the exact amount, because we now know that the fire district is going to be charging their own property tax. So in that world, that became banked capacity, because what we can do, what the city of Puyallup can do as a highest allowable levy is based on whatever their highest levy was. So our highest levies were when we had the fire department, and so Pierce County does a calculation every year. Had we been levying that all the way along, that would be what we could levy. And the bank capacity is the difference between what we could levy and what we actually levy.
Thank you.
Barbara, along that line still, I think what she may have been also inquiring about is that if you choose not to take that 1%, that in fact is banked.
Yes, correct. That is correct as well.
All right. With that, Councilmember Whitting.
Just with regard to the bank capacity from when we joined Central Pierce, I'd like to point out that Central Pierce charges property taxes, and if you look at the graph on one of our slides, the Central Pierce Fire represents 14.9% of our levy rate, as opposed to the city of 10.4%. So their rates have escalated a lot more quickly than ours, but the idea that we have bank capacity related to the transferring that money to Central Pierce, I would feel a moral obligation not to do that, because whatever we gave back now, our constituents are paying big time to Central Pierce. So I would not feel good about going back and tapping that quote-unquote bank capacity related to that transaction. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. And to clarify, I think it's worth clarifying, what you said was that of the property tax bill that people receive, 10.4% of that goes to the city and 15% of it goes to the fire district itself.
Yes.
Correct?
That is correct. And I do want to clarify that Central Pierce Fire number is the property tax portion only. It does not include the fire benefit charge. That comes on your tax bill as well, but it is a separate charge. It does not include that.
Would that put it somewhere in the vicinity of 17%?
I am not certain where that would put it.
Okay. So with that, I'm now going to, is there any further questions? Hearing none, I'm now going to go into a public hearing, and this is at a time when we will accept public comments. During this public comment period, a person can speak for 2 minutes. It's different than the standard 3, but that's just part of the procedures. So if an individual would like to come forward and speak about that presentation, the budget that's before us, please do so now. Okay, seeing no one, I will go ahead and close public hearing. And let's go ahead at this point. I would entertain a motion, excuse me, Councilmember Johnson. I would entertain a motion to adopt the ordinance determining and fixing the amount of funds to be raised by regular property taxes for 2026. Councilmember Johnson.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to consider an amendment to this particular 4A.
I understand that, Councilmember Johnson. Let's get the motion before us. Again, I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance. Councilmember Johnson.
Well, I can make a motion to adopt the ordinance if you'd like, and then I'll go into an amendment. So I'll make a motion to adopt the ordinance.
Okay, there is a motion before us. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Now, Councilmember Johnson, your motion is appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Those of you who have watched me over the course of, 10 years here, typically when this particular 1% comes up, I've never been a huge fan of it because this goes into the general fund. It's not going for a specific need. So I've always been a little bit, not in favor of it, and many times I've voted against it. I'm concerned about this one because we're coming, we're talking about our residents who we represent and who elected us. The whole state is experiencing the largest tax increase in the history of Washington state this year. The majority party decided to raise taxes to the tune of approximately $5 billion on top of their existing budget. That's going to be included in sales tax, B&O tax, capital gains tax, and everyone in the state's going to feel that in some capacity. So I don't know how many years we've been around the state, but this is the largest in its history. Now, in principle, this 1% in the scope of things is not much. It's $112,000. So in the scope of things, it's not going to mean much. But it's a matter of principle, as was mentioned earlier tonight, to fight for our town. We could adopt this, certainly, and some folks may or may not feel that increase of 1%. But to me, it's a matter of principle. And so I'm really concerned with this. Barbara had mentioned that the times that we've opted not to do it was 2009, and for quite a few years, that was right after the big crash of 2008 crash, and the economy was not doing too well. And so we were sensitive to that. It also happened during the COVID when the economy was really struggling as well. Well, I'd like to project that with inflation that we've had for quite a few years and with the largest tax increase in Washington state history, we could be in that moment. We might want to be a little sensitive to tax increases, even though significantly it probably wouldn't sink the ship, but it's a matter of principle. So that is where I'm struggling with this. I think that we can find a way to operate within our budget without the 1%. And I think that our city is not going to go under if we don't get it. Would it be nice to have it? Certainly, it's always nice to add more to the general fund, but to me, it's a matter of principle. So I'm going to move an amendment to amend the ordinance as it is, but to remove the 1% increase that's stated in there.
Okay, there is a motion, an amendment, before us. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there is discussion. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, that passes. We have a A. Okay, let's move on to actually, I will have to table the next motion to approve a resolution that outlines the property tax revenue for 2026, expressed in both dollars and percentage terms. I need to table that because the amendment has to modify those before they come before the body. So having said that, let's move to 4B, a public hearing and first reading of an ordinance on the proposed 2026 mid-biennium adjustments for the 2026 biennial budget. Barbara, please proceed.
Thank you, Mayor. This particular presentation is more from the expense side now. We talked about the revenues, and so this would be the formally adopting the budget. Action needed tonight is the public hearing and then first reading of the ordinance. So there are not that many proposed adjustments to the 2026 adopted budget. The general adjustments are about 9.1. There are some routine adjustments that are about $222,000. These are things that happen, like a little bit of medical health care increases and, truing up some of the other expenses related to personnel and benefits. There are also $758,000 of additions that I will talk a little bit more about on the next slide. We are transferring $3.5 million to Tier 3 funding for one-time projects. Again, that is $2.6 million where our 23-24 biennium, the general fund reserves ended up over the maximum target, and so we are moving excess monies to be available for Tier 3 spending. And then we're actually proposing to use some monies for Tier 3, $2.3 million, and I'll talk about that more in just a bit. The other adjustments to it are lodging tax related. So when we did the 25-26 budget, we put a placeholder in there for the amount that was going to be available to allocate to different LTAC organizations for the applications. That amount was actually a little bit less, and so we're reducing that amount in the budget. And then there were about $1.635 million of city-initiated projects that were added to that. So you take all of those together, the adopted budget as it stands right now is $157.4 million. That raises it up to $169.7. Again, there's no new revenues, other than the allowable 1% and things like that. We're not adding a bunch of revenues to offset these costs. So the proposed adjustments to the 26 adopted budget are adding, this is kind of a formality, adding a court clerk. It was approved as part of the City of Milton interlocal agreement for the court services in 2024, so we're just officially getting it added into the budget, and it is fully funded with fees that are paid by the City of Milton. Addition of an office assistant 2 in the police department to provide some clerical support there. That cost is fully offset by a reduction in the monies that we pay to South Sound 911. We were able to get that reduced and fund the office assistant. Adding a custodian to be able to provide adequate custodial services for city facilities. That cost is charged across all departments based on their square footage. Funding for the body-worn and in-car cameras. The original contract was funded with ARPA monies. Those monies have been fully spent now, and so to keep that program going, we needed to find permanent funding for it, and so this budget includes that. And then there is about $2.3 million for the library HVAC and some facility maintenance. That is the Tier 3 spending of the city's Tier 3 monies, those monies that are set aside for one-time purposes. So those are the major non-LTAC related adjustments in the budget. So if we look at citywide expenditures overall, it brings the expenditures, the total would be $169.5 million. This pie chart just kind of shows how it's broken up by department and all of the different kinds of services that we provide in all of those different departments. And that is my short presentation tonight. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councilmember Whitting.
I just wanted to know what the balance in our Tier 3 funding account is at the beginning of 2026 and what it's expected to be at the end of 2026.
So at the beginning of 2026, it would be about $6.2 million. That would be the $5 million that we've got set aside already for the jail and the old police station remodeling. And then an additional $1.2 million that's not been allocated at all. I don't like to project what's going to be at the end of 2026 because that wholly depends on how revenues come in and expenses go out. The budget does not project anything into Tier 3.
Just looking at the slide, I see the 3.5 coming. It looks like 3.5 is coming out and 2.3 is coming out. Am I reading that slide correctly?
Correct. 3.5 is going in, and then 2.3 would be coming back out.
Okay, so that would be a net gain for the Tier 3 funding.
Of about $1.2 million.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Members, at this point, I'm going to now refer back to the motion to approve first reading on 4A. We will go back to this in a moment. We passed the amendment that on the property tax adjustment, but we did not, in fact, go for a final passage. On that. So with that, again, under 4A, motion to approve first reading of an ordinance that determines the fixed amount of funds to be raised through regular property taxes for 2026. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Excellent. It's a first reading, so it's just an oral vote. Now we will refer back to 4B. Any further questions that members have for Barbara? Okay, with that, I'm going to now, again, open a public hearing. If there's any citizens who would like to comment on this aspect of the budget, please come forward. You each will be given 2 minutes. Okay, we are now going to close public hearing, and let's go ahead and we're going to now move on to a separate motion. Attorney Joe Beck, should we close out 4B before moving on to the LTAC funding motion?
Well, my recommendation, Mayor, is that you bifurcate the question and do LTAC and community grants as two separate discussions and votes with those people who do not feel like they need to recuse themselves, and then take the main budget, which would include those already decided items, and vote on that as an entire council. So you're basically bifurcating the budget question into 3 sections.
Okay, question I have on that then, if you have a motion to approve first reading of an ordinance, and you note that LTAC and community grant funding portions were previously approved in separate motions, are they part of that final motion?
So what I'm clarifying here is that the LTAC will be voted on by those people who do not have conflicts. That will be decided, but it is part of the budget. But the vote on the budget as a whole will not involve any discussion of LTAC, and it will just be a vote on the budget as a whole minus LTAC issues. And it's a legislative decision at that point, and nobody needs to recuse themselves from the overall budget, legislative budget decision when the LTAC has already been decided.
Okay, thank you for that guidance. We're now going to move on to, therefore, a motion to approve the LTAC funding recommendations as presented. Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be recusing myself as an employee of the Puyallup Main Street Association. I cannot vote on LTAC, and my most recent updated legal advice is that I do not have to leave the chambers. Are we in agreement tonight?
We'd like you to stay here, Councilmember
Okay, so
Dorr.
I will not be participating, but I'm not leaving.
Okay, with that, I will abstain from final vote, but I do have an amendment that I would like to put forward. So I will do so. I gave all of you a copy of that, and I discussed it in our budget process. And that is to, again, from LTAC, just so the public knows, a lodging tax is charged to everyone who stays in a hotel in Puyallup, and those funds are set aside and must be used for tourism purposes or to attract individuals to the city of Puyallup for overnight, things of that sort. And again, typically it's called heads and beds. My motion is to allocate up to $50,000 of those LTAC funds as matching funds with Washington State University, the purpose of which is to study the feasibility, cost, and impact to Puyallup for the development of a conference facility on their campus and utilizing the classic barns that are there that can be used for academic, civic, and other purposes. The expectation is that these funds will be used in 2026. This is, again, a 50-50 matching, and the packet you have before us and the one we've previously discussed has a comparison between what's possible at the Puyallup Research Extension Center and the Aspen Institute, which is located in, of course, Aspen, Colorado. This has been on a conference facility has been on their master plan for WSU for years. We have done everything on this dais to convince WSU to invest more of their funds into the campus in Puyallup. We, in fact, have tried to convince them, well, at one time, we had to convince them to actually keep it here, but now they're well beyond that. We want them to put more investment. So that is the amendment that I have before us. I would ask someone to move that and second it. Councilmember Johnson.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not prepared to move or second it, although I might. I want some more questions since I know you did mention this in the last meeting that we were at. And I do understand that LTAC, for the most part, this funding, unless constituents stayed in a hotel, then for the most part, none of their tax funds are contributing to this. This is from visitors who stay in hotels, and a portion of that tax comes back to the city to use for further promoting outside visitors to come and spend money and do business in our city. So it's kind of a unique fund for that. So, Mr. Mayor, I remember when I served as mayor, I met with the WSU folks in the Extension Center, and they have some lofty, I think, long-term lofty visions, but it didn't seem that the mother campus wasn't real. Their radar wasn't here at the Puyallup campus. Now, I'm hoping that over the years it maybe is getting more attention because we've done some things to promote and partner with them. So I guess I would be open to supporting this with at least some assurance or contingency if we move forward with this kind of a pilot exploration to look at some kind of a convention center, conference center that would draw folks into our city at this specific facility. Would there be any expectation that WSU would also kick in some matching funds to join with us in this as in some kind of a seed money to make sure we're not carrying the load of exploring that? Is that how I understand it?
That's exactly what this is.
Okay.
Yeah, this would not be utilized unless they meet us 50-50.
Right. Yeah.
And you'd be surprised. The fact that we did a proclamation acknowledging WSU 7 years ago made their main publication in Pullman. Local communities are not as apparent in their support of WS Research Extension Centers, and we have really changed that, and as such, they've noted that. I met with the director of the Board of Regents, with the dean. They all seem very positive about this project.
Yeah.
And I just met with Todd, the director of the Research Extension Center. He was very excited if this passed to be able to go back to Pullman and say that this kind of local support is actually occurring and is very optimistic about this.
Yeah.
So I believe, keep in mind, this is a placeholder. Unless they match us for these purposes, the money remains in the LTAC fund.
Yeah. And then what kind of time frame would you anticipate them to respond and step up within the year? Would you just say, in other words, if they had to step up within a year, it would the placeholder would be lost?
Right, 2026.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, I like the concept. I think it's a neat idea to convert some of those large, really historic barns into some pretty state-of-the-art convention meeting spaces. So, Mr. Mayor, with that in mind and assurance, I would like to make a motion to adopt this proposal, as you stated here, for consideration of using the LTAC money as a placeholder until Pullman and WSU can match that and pursue this vision.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second.
Okay, well, I really appreciate that enthusiasm. I think it was Councilmember Adler. But do we have anyone else wishing to speak on this? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Excellent. So now we will move on to final passage of the LTAC funding recommendations. I will abstain. I will abstain because one of the best things my wife ever did, she's a master gardener that's affiliated with this LTAC funding, and I do not want to give any appearance of conflict, even though she has had no determination whatsoever in these funds or advocating for that program. Nevertheless, they are in here, and I will abstain. Is there any further discussion? Okay, there's a motion before us. It's been seconded. All those in favor indicate by, well, actually, is there a motion for final passage?
Motion. I make a motion.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, excellent. We'll now move on to a motion to approve the community grant funding recommendations as presented. Councilmember Whitting.
We are in the throes of recusals tonight. I serve on the board of St. Francis House, which is one of the entities that is proposed to receive funding here, and I also have a daughter who works for the Puyallup Food Bank, so I get to recuse myself on 2 counts. So I will not be participating in this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those actually, we have a motion before us.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, excellent. Let's move on to the final motion to approve first reading of the ordinance, noting that LTAC and community grant funding portions have been previously approved by separate motions, and that our city attorney has reviewed that for any conflict of interest.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Excellent, it passes. Let's move on to number 5 on the agenda, ordinance. Second reading of an ordinance authorizing co-living housing consistent with Washington State House Bill 1998.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council, Katie Baker in the Planning Division. I have a brief presentation for you for second reading tonight on the adoption of code amendments to implement House Bill 1998, regulating co-living housing. Council approved first reading of this ordinance at your last meeting, October 7th, and at that time also provided direction to examine options for modifying the application of multifamily residential zoning allowances in the city. So tonight I'll be presenting information on those zoning options for your deliberation, and then asking for consideration of second reading. As a reminder, House Bill 1998 requires that co-living housing be allowed on any lot where at least 6 multifamily residential units are allowed. The list of zones that would be required in the city of Puyallup is on the screen, ranging from multifamily zones, mixed-use zones, some commercial zones, and our medical zone. These zones all allow multifamily housing of at least 6 units, and therefore are required to also allow co-living. Council adopted an updated land use map in July along with the comprehensive plan. The map on the screen shows that newly updated land use map, and the multifamily, commercial, and mixed use designations are generally shown on the map in the parcels in brown, red, and pink. So kind of in the center of the city, downtown, South Hill and the areas around the mall, as well as extending along East Main and East Pioneer and River Road. Those are our primary multifamily and mixed-use locations. So staff analyzed how eliminating or reducing multifamily options in these various zones would impact the city's ability to accommodate impact our land capacity and our ability to accommodate our adopted housing targets. So there are 7 total land use designations that include those 14 residential zones, multifamily zones. In at least 3 cases, removal of multifamily residential use would be very impactful to the city's land capacity and our ability to accommodate our housing targets. In at least 2 cases, I estimated that it would be at least a moderate impact to remove multifamily. And in 2 cases, I think it would be a fairly low impact. So I'll quickly go through each of those land use designations with a map, briefly describe that impact, and then happy to take any questions at the end. The first is the moderate density residential zone. This is a zone that primarily allows kind of middle housing style multifamily. So duplexes, triplexes, and townhomes are a common development style. While this is a kind of lower density multifamily zone, because of that state requirement that it be allowed anywhere that 6 units or more are allowed, that would need to be allowed in this zone district. This, however, would be probably a moderate impact to our land capacity, just because you can see this is not a highly used multifamily zone and is not extremely high density. With this zone, council could choose to limit the allowed uses to middle housing specifically, and limit that to a maximum of 5 units on any lot. Our high-density residential zone is kind of primarily through the central core of the city, north to south. Removal of multifamily would be a high impact to our land capacity, and inconsistent with the recently adopted comprehensive plan to accommodate a variety of housing options. And again, this would have a pretty big impact on our ability to accommodate housing targets. Similarly, we have 4 mixed-use zones in this land use classification. That would also be a very high impact to particularly our South Hill Regional Growth Center and ability to maintain that Regional Growth Center designation if multifamily were removed. We are also anticipating accommodating a majority of our housing targets in our regional growth centers, so removing multifamily from that would severely diminish that ability. Our neighborhood commercial land use designation, that's a new designation that we talked about and that council adopted with this comprehensive plan update. It's primarily very small parcels sprinkled throughout the city in areas where there is currently mostly non-conforming commercial zoning, surrounded primarily by residential uses. This is an area where the council could choose to remove multifamily as a allowed use, or limit those allowed uses to middle housing only, and restrict to a maximum of 5 units on any given lot. And this would have probably a low to moderate impact on our housing targets. This is our pedestrian-oriented commercial designation, which is our downtown commercial kind of mixed-use zone districts. Again, this is a regional growth center, and removal of multifamily residential would be a pretty big impact to this regional growth center designation and ability to accommodate housing targets. Our general commercial land use designation is a primarily commercial zone. We do allow multifamily as an accessory use, and it's limited to not more than 50% of any structure's square footage. So the primary intent here is to accommodate commercial rather than multifamily uses. And the council could choose to remove multifamily from this zone district with very little impact to our land capacity or ability to accommodate housing targets. And finally, the medical land use designation and zone is the area around and including Good Samaritan Hospital. This is an area that does allow for multifamily residential uses, and council could choose to remove that multifamily use option from the zone with fairly little impact to our land capacity and housing targets. I will say that I think we anticipate co-living may be a compatible use with this zone district, but it would have a pretty low impact on our housing targets if council would like to go that direction. So to kind of summarize or talk a little bit more about how these actions could move forward, if council chooses to amend the zoning code to limit multifamily uses in a given zone, this work could be prioritized. Staff could be directed to work on this as a high priority and bring these zoning changes back to council potentially as early as the first of the year, next year. If there are zoning changes that council would like to be made to a lower density zone, that would take a comprehensive plan amendment, which can only happen once a year. And so that's something that we would need council direction to work on starting next year and would be brought to council in late 2026 for a vote. So with that, I present these options to you for your discussion and consideration, as well as second reading of the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Any questions? Okay. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Katie, on this multifamily housing, I wasn't a huge fan of it, just in terms of the conceptual idea. And again, the proof is still out whether it may be fine. I don't know. But it sounds like, if I'm hearing you correctly, that the most of the areas where these, in essence, are somewhat mandated are really out of most residential areas. So is that pretty fair? I mean, there's certainly some residences in some of these core areas, but I would say the overwhelming majority of single-family residences are not going to be affected by this specific kind of housing. Is that a fair assessment?
I think that is a fair assessment.
Yeah, so maybe, and again, just to throw a number out there, maybe 80% or more are not going to be affected by this in terms of the geographic region of our city. Just throwing a number out there for an example, not the exact science. So I think in some sense that's good. I'm concerned about this whole concept of housing options. I do think, and refresh my memory, I think the Planning Commission, or maybe it was the council, did we add something over and above what the state required in terms of like bathrooms?
Yes, the Planning Commission did add a more specific definition of what the bathroom component needs to include. So each sleeping unit is to include a bathroom, and that bathroom is to include a sink, a toilet, and a shower at the very least.
Where prior to the Planning Commission's recommendation on that, it wouldn't have to have, you could have theoretically a bunch of rooms with a shared, shower or bathroom unit. Yeah.
That's correct.
So, the one positive, pushback that the planning did in terms of that is it made the pencil costs go up on construction. So the odds of these all penciling out for massive development is probably got a lot more expensive. And so the odds of these being built because of that added element of a bathroom probably made many developers perhaps at least think twice about the added costs on that. So I think there's some element that the Planning Commission, I think, got right on that to help kind of make that a little bit more stringent. And it also makes sense. It's not just the element of costing more for developers. I think in terms of privacy and just the whole thing, you should have your own unit, your own bathroom unit, and that makes total sense on that. So those are the only questions I have for now. I'll turn it back, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Other questions? I will provide a comment. The lady who, Mrs. Glace, who testified, talked about her concerns. I share those concerns. The issue, however, is that the state in our Constitution, unfortunately, does not have provisions that protect cities per se. We are a product of the state. They determine what we can do and what we cannot do. The state constitution doesn't specifically say a city has these rights. And it has been tradition, however, that local planning has always been just that, local. And years ago in the state legislature, the debate started as the Northwest started growing more and more, is how we were going to handle growth. The state legislature, their belief was that the local jurisdictions were not handling growth in an adequate way. So in the early 90s, the Growth Management Act passed. And that was a huge conflict at that time. I believe the cities had far more power than the state did. More independence. Eastern Washington was more powerful at that time. We had more of a balanced legislature, so to speak. And the Growth Management Act in 1994, and basically it did this. It said the state could identify targets for local jurisdictions to hit, but it was up to those local jurisdictions to determine how to do that. The state could not tell them how to do zoning, could not tell them to do the very things they are doing now. And the only way the Growth Management Act passed is because they struck that bargain. And it became a national model that targets set by the state, let the local jurisdiction, they determine how they hit those targets. Well, the state legislature has completely given up on that. The state legislature now has come in and taken over what has traditionally been a local city council's job of determining zoning, where things go for multifamily type of structures to go in, and they're mandating things down to levels that, again, are unprecedented. And yet cities are really somewhat helpless, excuse me. And even in this particular case, I worry, because I do agree that the changes that the Planning Commission made are good changes. I think if we don't accept this as they gave it to us, it will automatically be implemented in January and will not have the provision that there be individual bathrooms with showers. And I think that is a game changer, because I know in Seattle they have these, but what makes them work is the fact they have an independent bathroom with sink, with a toilet, of course, and with a shower. And I would be very concerned if that provision wasn't in, because now we would get, in essence, boarding homes, is what I would view them as. These are more constructed to be co-living environments. Now, what my worry is that we approve this, and then, like we did with ADUs, the state legislature will come back and say, oh, well, we're going to exempt you from using showers or bathrooms, and we're going to make it so you can't mandate that. But I think that's a problem for another day, a battle for another day for us to fight. I think at this point, it would be advisable to accept this, because it is certainly better than the alternative that we will face January 1st. To Mrs. Glaze, I apologize. To you and other people who are concerned in this community, I am one of those people who are concerned. I hope that the provisions that the Planning Commission put on, and the hookup fees that are associated with that, with the city, will make it so that someone who puts this in, it'll be a very specific structure. It will not be a retrofitted where they go into a house and then they go ahead and just kind of mishmash, change it. But this will be a very organized, from the ground up, constructed in a manner that will accommodate co-housing. So last time I voted no. I think I was the only person to vote no. This thing, I think the wisest vote is to vote yes. And I will vote yes. But I will certainly keep my eye out on this, and I will anticipate further conflicts with the state if they somehow relinquish on this, like they have done other things, and change our ability to make the modifications that we have. With that, Councilmember Whitting.
Yes, I'd just like to speak to the idea of co-living a little bit. This is something new, and it's a little bit scary to the population, and new and change is always a little bit difficult to countenance, but I tend to be a little bit of a, been an entrepreneur in my business life, and I bring over some of that kind of thinking here, and in reading up on co-living, it provides an opportunity to have some lower cost housing, which we badly need in Puyallup, and it provides the opportunity for home ownership. And we've heard concerns from Ms. Glaze that about people taking care of their properties, and we all share that concern. We all want our city to be well maintained and well honored, and my thinking is that the opportunity for home ownership that this co-living provides actually gives us the likelihood that we'll have more home ownership than putting in would otherwise be permitted in these areas as another apartment building. We've got a lot of apartment buildings in Puyallup, and I'd like to see a little more home ownership. And I feel like this co-living provides the opportunity for that home ownership, but it's to a certain extent, this is going to be an experiment. and I recognize that there's some risk associated with it. And as we move forward with this, I'm in favor of approving this, but keeping a close eye on it so that as we move forward, if we do see the community deteriorating, then we will need to address it. But if we see the neighborhoods actually improving because they've got more home ownership, then we might want to encourage and incentivize this kind of living, and which will allow our kids to live in the community as opposed to having to move to Yelm or Enumclaw or someplace in order to be able to afford the property. So that's my thinking on this. And again, I don't see much alternative on our behalf. The state has set the ground rules here, and I support this and hope that this proves a beneficial and worthwhile experiment. And time will tell. Thank you.
Thank you. Katie, before I go on to Councilmember Gilliam, is there a fee simple requirement in this bill?
There is not.
Well, Councilmember Whitting, I think we've just been queued up. If you would like to put an amendment that require that they be fee simple, I will second that.
I don't think that's hit the wrong button. I do not think that a fee simple is appropriate in this case. I'm a big fan of fee simple, but the I'll have to think about that one a little bit.
Well, you have a few minutes to do that, because how else would you get the home ownership? Councilmember Gilliam.
Just before I make a comment, what is fee simple? Can you
fee simple.
that?
I'm sorry. I apologize. Fee simple just means if this, in fact, is going to enhance home ownership, I don't mind putting a provision on it that would say that these are only to be used in environments where there is ownership. Fee simple. You pay for it. You receive it as an asset. So it's, basically it's like buying a condominium. And if that's where we're trying to encourage, which I am, I think that kind of a provision and amendment would be very appropriate.
Can I weigh in a little bit?
Certainly. More? Go ahead.
The fee simple relates to land ownership, so that a condominium is not in fact a fee simple situation because the condo does not own the land underneath it. So a fee simple row house, the row house sits on the ground and the land underneath it belongs to the owner of the home. In a condominium, that's not the case. So a condominium is not fee simple.
So I stand corrected. Maybe the term is incorrect, and if you have an amendment that would affect what you were saying in a condominium environment, I'm sure the terminology can be found by Katie. So again, if you want to propose that amendment, we will wait, but we'll move on to Councilmember Gillian, and if you want to present that amendment, I will gladly second it. However, the terminology you want to use, fee simple, condominium-ized, I believe it may be a term that could be used. Whatever the term is, if you in fact are advocating for home ownership, I think that would be a great way to do it. But we should encourage that.
I see City Manager quickly trying to say something.
Yeah, certainly.
Not to rain on anyone's parade here, but I don't think the city attorney is looking at it. I think that the state law precludes that type of restriction. I don't think that is within the state law provision. So we're kind of scrambling to look at that to verify that. So again, not trying to rain on anyone's parade, but just trying to provide good guidance to you on that.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Gilliam.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. I think I just want to share my own experience. I've actually stayed in one of these before. Now, it was an Airbnb, okay? So it was owned by a private entity, and you could rent out a room for however long you want to rent it out. But I genuinely really enjoyed the community atmosphere that this living style created. I could even see myself trying to simplify my life to where I could even shrink my expenses by living in something like this. The difference being the state is mandating one parking spot per four livable units, and I'm not a fan of that. I don't think that we can get around that. But I can tell you, having firsthand experience of actually experiencing this, it was wonderful. Now, as far as people's personal behavior, I just got to give a huge shout out to our Puyallup Police Department for showing up and helping people process and work through whatever challenges that they have. But if I am thinking about the students that I'm teaching right now and where they're going to live, are they going to live in their parents' home or basement forever? There has to be an affordable option for them. And I would bless my child to live in one of these. So I know that we're afraid of this potential challenge, but I also want to encourage us to look at the very positive potential that is also there. So I am in favor of this, and I'm also in favor of, well, in all reality, when I'm looking at the map and I'm looking at what's actually available, I don't really see this being something that's going to become the next hot thing. I really see this as just an option, and people are going to have to, whoever's going to develop it is going to have to weigh the options. So I don't see these popping up all over Puyallup. I don't see them pop. It's just not feasible. It's not realistic. But I do like the idea of maybe one or two being in Puyallup. And again, it's going to have to be well thought out because of the space that we have available for us. But for firsthand experience, I really enjoy this. And I think people will also enjoy it if it ever actually comes to fruition. So I just wanted to throw some positivity out there and kind of share some firsthand experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gilliam. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too take comfort, as was mentioned earlier, that the amount of real estate in our city in proportion is very, very slim where these are even able to be built. And on top of that, available land and buildings are already in place. It may not pencil out to tear down and build these. So I think that our risk for this particular housing is pretty minimal considering what other cities may have to absorb in their land comprehensive footprint. So I take comfort in that. I still, out of principle, I'm kind of wrestling a little bit with it, and the word was mentioned, it's an experiment. Well, the state is experimenting with our town, and I don't want to be the subject of their experiment. I remember when they experimented a few years ago when they went through the police reform laws. And it's amazing when that experiment went through, two things happened. Crime shot up and arrests went down. That experiment didn't work out too well, and they're scrambling a few years later to get that fixed. So I just, again, I think it's overreach. I'd like to give them credit that they have good intentions, but I just don't think necessarily always good intentions are work out the way they should be. So I'm okay voting for this particular bill, even though I resent it at a principle, only because I think the footprint on us is very, very minimal, and we can't necessarily stop it anyway. But I do think that the Planning Commission adding the bathroom raised the bar, and I think that's helpful too. So we're really, this is really a weird spot that we're in. I mean, it's not just us, but every single city in the state of Washington is wrestling with this. So we're not exempt from that, and we're not the only ones, but we're just kind of getting to the point of, really trying to wrestle through and make the best out of something that we couldn't control. So anyway, that's my comments, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Katie, for your work on this and for educating us, and thank you for working with the Planning Commission to bring this forward. And the many conversations that you've had with them as they worked through this. It is appreciated. I would be remiss if I did not make comment related to the fact that renters are not bad people. And I want to be real clear about that. I grew up in a single parent home. My mother rented her entire life. She is 71 years old. She did not buy her first home until she was 58 years old. I grew up in a very small apartment complex right here in downtown Puyallup. You cannot tell me that that somehow had some negative effect on my life, my ability to volunteer, be a good student, and give back to my community, and ultimately end up on this dais. We need a lot of different housing options to ensure that people can succeed and get ahead in life, period, full stop. I do not appreciate the narrative that these types of housing options, you know, those people and renters, I do not appreciate that. My father, a renter, his entire life, he died at 54. He was a 5-letter athlete at Puyallup High School, went on to play football at Colorado State University until he was injured, came back, was a longshoreman, but he was a renter. Do we now, is he just in history like, oh, he was a renter? I have a big problem with that narrative. We need housing options, and we need them now. I appreciate the work of our staff, and I appreciate the Planning Commission bringing forward what they have, and I look forward to this being a successful model so individuals can continue moving forward and upward in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Adler. Deputy Mayor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Katie, for the presentation and explanation on some of these tough questions that you've been presented with. And thank you to my colleagues for clarifying fee simple. These units are not going to be available in a condo form, if you will. So just for clarification, only one owner of the entire building will be put in place, but have many options available for those that need a home to rent. After doing a bit of research on these type of units, I know it is a bit scary and a bit interesting as a new concept. I was skeptical also, but after doing my due diligence and looking into it a little bit deeper, I think it is a necessary model that our city could use. I don't think it's going to be this major boom of these type of housing units. However, I do see the practicality behind it. And, you know, like my colleague before me mentioned, you know, these are individuals that need opportunity, and that renters are not bad people, and that we do have 2 major construction projects coming to our downtown, and those buildings are going to be filled with great people and be able to integrate into our city and become part of our economic engine within our downtown. And so I really, really do think that this is an interesting model that I think we can, you know, move forward and be able to see if this experiment with this new model will truly work. So thank you, Katie. Thank you to the Planning Commission. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor King. Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. So I've been saying this for 12 years. Renters are not less than. They just aren't. I also, acknowledging my own age, my kids do not want the same thing that I want. What people are looking for now, we want our children, I want my children to be able to live in this community. I grew up here. I just really would love them to be able to stay, but I don't know if they're going to be able to with the way things are going. But then also, I've had this conversation for so many years. We have people, our college students that just get out of school, they come home. Maybe they're trying to figure out what they want, but because they're going to rent one of these new apartments or some type of housing in this community, they don't matter. They're less than. I wholeheartedly reject that. We don't get to, I don't understand why we continue to go down this road of people being less than because they do not have the resources to own. But I'm going to support this, and I just want to say thank you to Councilmember Adler for sharing your story. I'm a few people away, but I can feel the emotions behind that. It's not easy to put yourself out there like that, and I just want you to know that I'm grateful that you did, and I appreciate your comments.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Let me just add that Councilmember Whitting has always talked about giving people the opportunity of ownership. And it's not to disadvantage anyone who lives in any other type of setting. But the idea is that a lot of people are shut out because they don't have condominiums, for example, at a reasonable price that would be probably in the long run much less than renting. And now in this case, he's been an advocate for even giving a lower cost alternative to people so that they can, in the long run, not pay increases every single year in the rent amount that they pay, but instead be like a homeowner that owns an asset and that gives them some financial stability and liberty in the future just because they do have an asset. So the idea is to give people more alternatives to own. It is not to belittle anyone because of the condition or the state that they live in. I think that is not what this council is about. It's about giving people the opportunity, however, to build an asset over time. And I see the way the legislature has comprised is that they're taking that away. They make it almost impossible for anyone to build a condominium. And I'm talking about a low-cost condominium that my kids could get into, where they could buy and then gain equity. And then over the years, instead of paying rent, that they could have that as an asset and they could leverage that into something else that they want to, into retirement. So I am not in any way, and I don't think anyone on this council would ever belittle anybody for living in one environment or the other. The idea, though, is let's give people opportunity. Let's give them the opportunity to buy something that is affordable, that in the long run will be a lot less than them renting from someone and experiencing the rent increases every single year. That's what I think the altruistic side of this is not to belittle people. So, Katie, let me ask you one question, and that is, in this bill, is there a requirement as to what cities it applies to based on population?
No, I don't believe there's any requirement as to population. It's only in any multifamily zone. So there may be some cities that have very limited multifamily zoning, but it's not a population basis bill.
Well, I'll move for final passage. There has been no motion that has been come forward. Would someone like to move the second reading of an ordinance authorizing co-living housing consistent with Washington State House Bill 1998?
So moved. Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Any further discussion? I will just add this. I do wish that whether you use the term fee simple or whether you use any other term, I wish there was a way that we could make it so that not every apartment that goes in place is an actual rental unit, but instead is something that people can buy, and buy at an extremely affordable rate that may be, again, cheaper in the long run by far than paying rent for the rest of however long you live in that place and you're not building equity. I am continually frustrated by the state legislature asking us to add more housing, but then making it more difficult for people to actually own the housing. We could make housing that enough of it would bring down the price so that a condominium would be affordable. So I'm going to vote for this. If there was an amendment that Councilmember Whitting would put on to maybe make this more of an affordable option for people to buy, I would certainly vote for that. I believe it would run counter, as we've heard from the attorney, to the underlying piece of legislation. But I hope the legislature is hearing this. Not only should they make it easier for condominiums, but they should promote them so that everyone can have the opportunity to get in something where they can gain equity over time and they can be more financially stable. I believe that's one component, not the only, but it is one component to that financial stability. So with that, we're going to move for a vote. We'll go directly to a roll call. All those in favor, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Whitting?
Aye.
Councilmember Dorr?
Aye.
Councilmember Adler?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor King?
Aye.
Councilmember Gilliam?
Aye.
Mayor Castema?
Aye. We'll now move on to the city manager's report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to kind of deviate a little bit from my report and just simply introduce somebody that's an important new member of our team. It's my pleasure to introduce our new Development and Permitting Services Director, Courtney Brunell. Courtney is coming to us from the city of Buckley, where she was the city administrator. Before that, worked at the city of Lakewood and a few other public entities. She is a Puyallup resident, has a background in development and permitting services, and so I just asked Courtney just to introduce herself briefly to the council this evening and to the community. So, Courtney.
Thank you, City Manager. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and members of the council. I am so thrilled to be here. As the City Manager mentioned, the majority of my career has been in public service, both as local nonprofits as well as in local government. And just in my first 3 days here, I just want to thank the team for such a warm welcome, and I can already sense just this pride and excellence in the work that we do, and I am honored to be a part of it. He mentioned I have deep roots here to the Puyallup community, and I'll just say it's good to be home, and I'm grateful to be here and look forward to working with all of you as a partner in all things permitting and development. So thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. I think Councilmember Whitting wants to provide some personal comments. Please do.
I just have a very, very important question for you. Which district do you live in?
Not yours.
Not yours, District 1.
Well, welcome anyway.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor King.
Just want to say welcome. This has been, I know, a long journey for the city to be able to find someone permanent, and my biggest advice to you is kick butt and take names. So do a good job, and everybody will thank you, I promise.
Thank you.
Any further comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
City Manager Steve Kirkley, do you have any more comments?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, with that, we're going to move on to councilmember comments. Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. I believe that we will not meet again until after the Veterans Day holiday, and so I just want to thank everyone who has served our country and everyone who has given the ultimate sacrifice, gone but not forgotten, and thank God every single day for those men and women who step up to defend our country. May we do right by them every single day. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Adler. Those are good comments. Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. I just wanted to share with the public that when I first became elected, I was appointed as the ex officio for Central Pierce Fire and Rescue and had the opportunity to work with Chief Keith Wright, and Chief Wright has passed away. He was a very good man, and his heart was with our community. He had a heart for service, not just the fire industry. I would see him out with Boy Scouts and picking up trash and volunteering at events. I just wanted to acknowledge his loss. My heart is with him and his family and the Central Pierce. And it's my understanding that the service will be November 1st. That's all I have at this point. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Dorr. Appreciate those comments. Councilmember Gilliam.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. I am on the Puyallup Main Street Association board, and it got postponed until tomorrow night due to the Mariners, the Blue Jays. So I regretfully announced that we lost, but we went further than we've ever gone before. So go Mariners. Also, some upcoming events between now and the next council meeting. We're having 2 ribbon cuttings. One on October 30th at the Van Lierop Park, ribbon cutting for the new playground. And then the other one is October 6th for our 9th Avenue. Do I want to call it a festival street? Pedestrian street? We're allowed to call it a festival?
It's a festival.
The festival street.
Yes.
So it'll officially be open, you guys. So you'll be able to drive through right next to the fair once again. And with all the lighting and with all the safety measures and everything. So really excited for both of those ribbon cuttings. And then I regret I will be at a teacher-parent conference tomorrow night, so I won't even get to be at the Puyallup Main Street Association board meeting, but I will be with parents and my students, encouraging them in my day job. So just wanted to add that.
I will let them know that they jinxed the Mariners.
It's all their fault. That's all I got. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Gilliam. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to thank the council for supporting the amendment to suppress the tax increase 1%. I think that was a good move. It's the right move. People are under pressure, are being tax burdened across the state in multiple ways. Inflation is still not as low as we like to see it. So I appreciate the support on that. I know that constituents appreciate it. I also want to thank some constituents. I know sometimes we get a little bit, kind of fiery up here. Each of us have, kind of perspectives. But just it seems like in this last week, I've had several constituents contact me, some through email even tonight, really requesting support for this suppression of this tax increase that we could certainly have done. But I've had people that watch our council meetings on TV, and several have come to my house even, and just to thank me, and I think many of us as we advocate on their behalf. So people are watching, people notice, and they appreciate, sometimes the fight, and it's not fight is not always a negative connotation of violence, but it's a commitment and a persistence to push back on overreaches that could be happening on behalf of our city. So I think this council is an amazing council, in my opinion. I've been on here 10 years now. And certainly politically, there's some, varying political, philosophical differences. And I can't think in 10 years where it's ever gotten out of hand to become personal. And I appreciate that mutual respect of, people just say civil dialogue, point, counterpoint, end of the day when the council makes a determination, we move on. And so I want to thank my colleagues for that kind of freedom of expression and advocacy on behalf of our constituent base. They do notice, they do appreciate, and there's always a few people who, are going to be, highlighting, whatever, but overall scope, people appreciate what we do, and not that we're perfect, but they certainly appreciate that we're doing the best we can with the information that we have to represent them in a way that's meaningful, and they care for the town like we do. So thank you so much. That's it. Oh, one more shout out to Marla. Here's to hi to Marla. Yeah.
Kate, Councilmember Whitty.
I just, we had that tragic traffic accident here in the last few weeks, and I've been hearing from a number of constituents about the need for reduced speeds in residential neighborhoods, and I understand that there's quite a bit of bureaucracy that has to go along with studying what needs to be done to to reduce traffic speeds, do traffic calming. But I just want to speak out that I think needs to be an upcoming priority for us to do this, to avoid future tragedies and to make sure that our kids are safe when they walk the streets of our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Whiting. Deputy Mayor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also just want to say thank you to the veterans who have served our country and those that also gave their ultimate sacrifice, like my colleague had said before me, and we appreciate all that current, former, and those that have moved on have done for our country and continue to do. I encourage our citizens to come by our memorial just outside of City Hall and see a lot of great scriptures or readings that are on plaques out there commemorating those that have served in our community. And just want to say thank you to those veterans and those that continue to serve. That's all I have for you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll provide comments before we go into executive session. I appreciate the discussion that the council had regarding the 250th anniversary of the United States. And of course, that's coming on July 4th, 2026. And we have quite a large planning group involved in trying to make an event here in Puyallup. And there's more insight. Councilmember Whiting, do you have further comments?
You brought to mind something that I'd like to I expressed a concern earlier about this, and I've resolved my concern, so I just wanted to make that comment.
I understand. I received that. I can go ahead and refresh people on that.
Great, thanks.
And that is the idea that, I know it's kind of a dialogue, interesting, and that is that the 250th anniversary, that it's been determined by Dean Burke, who kind of, it's his science to look at tourism, that there would be a vacuum and it would be appropriate for Puyallup to have some type of event. But as we're getting into this more and more, the nuances just get deeper. For example, on July 4th of next year, when we're probably going to see more fireworks than we've ever seen before, there's going to be the largest dog show will be taking place at the fairgrounds at that time. And so there are restrictions as far as having fireworks near the fair. And all I can say is good luck with that. If anyone has ever seen Puyallup on July the 4th, it'll be very difficult to have that. There are complications that are occurring with it, but I believe this. I believe on July the 4th, you're going to see this community come together like it's probably never come together before. I know that all the service organizations that we have here, everyone from the Puyallup Main Street Association to the Chamber to the Mansion, are all working because they really want to make this an event that people will remember for the rest of their lives. And I believe we can make that happen on the 250th anniversary. I still remember on the 200th anniversary, they had a train that went around the United States that had all these documents that were very important to the founding of the United States, all kind of memorabilia, clothing of framers of the Constitution, etc. These are the kind of things people are looking for. So if anyone out there has an idea as such, keep in mind, contact your council member, because we want to make the 250th anniversary something that every child will remember and for the rest of their life. And that, of course, will be very memorable for everyone else, too. So I appreciate, Councilmember Whiting, you contacted me on that, talking about how you thinking it would be, or Dean Burke thinking it would be very appropriate to have such an activity. The last thing I want to address, though, is traffic calming. There's been a lot of discussion on the council, and I believe there's a sea change occurring in the city of Puyallup. In the past, I have seen people very hesitant for speed cameras or any type of, maybe extreme enforcement, I don't know exactly if that's the term or not, to stop people from speeding, stop them from reckless driving, etc. But I am seeing a sea change because I think our neighborhoods are being inundated like they have never been inundated with traffic before. And I believe that we can now enter into a period where we have made the city of Puyallup very safe through our police protection, supporting our police, giving them the ample tools to do their job. Crime is coming down and has statistically come down consistently. But now I have a feeling we're ready to move on to another level, and that is making our neighborhoods safe for all families, all children, but making that throughout the city. And I think the way that's going to happen is by people embracing that traffic calming process that we have. Just so everybody knows, if you go onto the City of Puyallup website and you click Ezra and you put traffic calming, traffic mitigation, both of those terms in there, you'll get the process. And if you get 50% of the people on your street to agree, 51% actually, to agree to this traffic calming methods, we will bring our traffic engineers in and we will study what is probably the most appropriate way to bring the speeds down to make your road safer. Now, why do we require those signatures? Because the truth of the matter is some people don't like speed bumps. Some people don't like traffic circles for calming, for example. We want to see that, in fact, a majority of the people would like some sort of a mitigation to take place. And that's the threshold that this program offers. So please keep that in mind. I would like to see every quadrant of Puyallup, especially in the valley, because I think a lot of commuters come through a lot of the neighborhoods. I would like to see these neighborhoods become much safer to kids on the street. I, for example, grew up throwing football, baseball on the streets all the time. So with that, we're now going to move into executive session. The council will now recess into executive session to engage in the process of planning or adopting a strategy or position to be taken during the course of any collective bargaining. The executive session is expected to last 1 hour, and no further action is expected following the executive session. So with that, I'm going to end the regular session. I would not be here if I were you. Feel free to leave because we will not be coming back. So with that, we're now going to end the regular session of the council. Thank you all.